My unique ability is around just endurance and marathoning and just the long haul, like the long game. So that's even just building a product inside of an agency. I call that moving slow to move fast later.
This is the Agency Profit Podcast, the podcast for agency owners that want to run a more profitable business that doesn't depend on them. Introducing your host, CEO and co-founder of Parakeeto, Marcel Petitpas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. I'm your host, Marcel Petitpas, and I'm joined today by a special guest who I know from a community that I'm a part of called SaaS Academy. He is the founder of a company called LifterLMS, and he's here to talk a little bit about how he built LifterLMS out of an agency that he had originally started and all of the things that were necessary to create the possibility for that. So I'm really excited to introduce you guys to my good friend, Chris Badgett. Chris, thanks for being here today.
I'm excited, Marcel. Thank you so much for having me. The agency owner is near and dear to my heart, so I'm happy to share and try to add as much value as I can to you out there listening or watching today.
Well, you've got a lot of empathy for the agency owner because it wasn't that long ago that you too were the agency owner. And so before we get into the nitty gritty, I want to first give you a chance to, in your own words, explain kind of what you do at LifterLMS and how you got here.
That's awesome. Well, LifterLMS is a learning management system for WordPress. So I help course creators create, launch, and scale. A big part of our community is actually agencies who build learning management system, membership sites, courses for clients.
And so at what point did you start to decide that you wanted to build LifterLMS? How did that come about?
You know, I used to blog and nobody would read my stuff. But when I started blogging about online courses and memberships and WordPress, I started getting inquiries and comments. And I even had a company in New York City flew me out there to consult on how to build an affiliate program for their WordPress LMS business in a particular course niche. And I was like, I hit a pain point, or I hit like market demand. And that's why, so when we were doing all this client work, I was always trying to focus it on courses, membership sites, LMS. And that's what we did. And, so our biggest clients, we used to build these kinds of things custom from scratch every time, like so much development, so much custom user interface design. While still leveraging WordPress in some way. But a lot of these were highly customized sites and training platforms for different industries that we're building. So our very first LifterLMS users were actually our high-paying clients, which sounds kind of crazy, the audacity we had at the time to have our best clients essentially being beta testers of our product. But we realized that there's a product in here. We're going to start building that. You know, our clients are going to be our first users.
So, of course, you have that realization, you start building out this SaaS product, but I'm really intrigued as to what the most challenging parts of that process were, because it's not easy to build software inside of an agency.
My unique ability is around just endurance and marathoning and just the long haul, like the long game. So that's even just building a product inside of an agency. I call that moving slow to move fast later. Imagine taking all your profits, even taking a pay cut where you have to have difficult conversations with your partner at home about, you know, we're actually making less money for a while. And that ended up being a couple of years to really bootstrap the product and pretty significantly low income where I was paying, the developer who was building the original prototype, he was bringing home a lot more a month than I was, but I was making an investment for the future and I had to work within my cash constraints. So I'm kind of a bootstrapper in the truest sense of the term. If I was a little smarter, maybe I would have taken on a little capital to like just ease the transition, but I did it so the most painful part was really just taking that hit to build the prototype, to launch, to have a small user base before things really start to go parabolic. That was a long, slow, hard road.
How did you create a business that was able to sustainably cash flow the investment that you were making in the product and, do that without cratering the agency or, putting it in a really risky position?
So I'm pretty good at talent scouting. So I can tend to find good people that I can get for a lot less than the usual. And I'm also, because like I said, I like to develop other leaders, I'm willing to invest in somebody who's maybe less experienced and train them up and give them opportunity to make some mistakes and grow. So there's some of that going on where I was able to build an economical team engine. That's one. Number two is we shot to the top of the market. Well, at least for us in small business or VSB world, $50,000, $70,000 sites, there's a lot of margin on that. And then the third and final piece of advice I would say is, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I can work really hard with lots of focus over sustained amounts of time. I've always kind of chosen to live below my means so that I can take those calculated risks. And if you don't do that, I have a 1-car family. You're more likely, if you were to drive through my town, you're more likely to see me on a bicycle than in a car. But these are all just ways of making sure you can operate on low level. So if you're going to make that transition, that ability to do more with less becomes an asset for sure. And it's definitely been a unique advantage that I know some people can't take those cuts, but I could have never gotten to where I was without doing that.
You must have had a certain level of insight into your business to be able to predict accurately, in this case, as it is, how much money you were actually going to have to work with to build the product and how you're going to be able to sustain that investment over time.
Well, there's I often find myself in different contexts saying this phrase that it's a process, not an event. I say that about a lot of different things, but transitioning from agency to a software company was definitely a multi-year process, not an event like it happened on Tuesday on this date. So one of the ways I look to smooth that transition and quite frankly, survive that transition and ease some of the cash flow constraints is I ask myself the question, how can I create, based on all we know about delivering high-end custom web dev solutions for membership sites, how can we productize that in a way that we give away as much of the value as we can while using mostly just our tool and some templated sites with limited customization that still delivers the value at a medium price point?
Hey, it's Marcel here from Parakeeto, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for tuning in and enjoying the Agency Profit Podcast. I hope you're getting a ton of value out of today's episode, and if you are, then you might want to check out some of the other great resources that we've created to help agency owners be more successful and profitable over at Parakeeto.com. We have our blog, which is loaded with other podcast episodes, as well as blog posts that detail a lot of things that we might be talking about today, and a ton of free downloadable resources, checklists, cheat sheets, spreadsheet templates, all to help you get everything that you need to be more profitable without having to use anything that's paid or any additional software. And then, of course, while you're there, you might want to check out our software product, Parakeeto, that helps you run more profitably by answering your most important operations questions without having you waste time on spreadsheets, and even lets you run simulations so you can figure out what happens if we get a new client or we hire a new employee and really model that before you make the decision. But that's enough about me and our products. I'll let you get back to the episode. I hope you enjoy it.
So I was hitting the market from everywhere from the free user to the bootstrapper with limited resources to the money's no object do-it-yourselfer agency to the high-end custom client. And I'll tell you what I learned in that experience is these people at these clusters of people at the different price points are very different. So a productized service is likely going to be the ideal customer or client is going to have different attributes than your custom high-end work. But they can see the value, and you can deliver the value, but they're different. They look similar, but they're going to be a little different. But that's why we started working with productized services. And I just want to recommend a couple great people I learned about productized services. One, his name is Brian Castle. I think he has a course called Productized, but he's a great leader and thinker in terms of creating productized services out of an agency. Highly recommend him. And then there was another woman, Mandy Ellison, I believe her name is. She has a program called the Hands Off CEO.
Hands Off CEO. She's been one of my favorite guests on the show so far. So my question for you, Chris, is when you started experimenting with productized services, what was the moment that you realized like this is the way that we need to move forward?
A productized service is sort of a halfway point between agency and product. So that it just kind of forced me to be like, all right, well, if you're going to be a product guy, start thinking more in systems and templates and scale and think about creating value in that way. I mean, so like as a mindset shift, just as an example, like I could be on a sales call and close a $70,000 project in an afternoon, whereas like on a product, I needed a full year to get that much revenue in a software company. So it's a totally different mindset. And if you put productized service in the middle, like how could I sell 7 $10,000 productized services or 14 $5,000 productized services? It's like, all right, now let's think about that. What can I create that's of that amount of value that's not going to cost an arm and a leg of my time and very talented team members to do it? The other benefit is you can run, when you really get clear on productized service offerings, you don't have to put your best people on it. You may need their help to develop the templates and the processes and to like brainstorm and everything, but it's much more of a, standard operating procedures way of implementing to get the value for the client in a way that feels customized and bespoke.
So walk me through like what was the data and reporting like, and how did you what kind of lift in profitability, gross margin did you kind of see in productized services versus some of the stuff that you were doing before?
Our agency work, even though we were doing really high-end projects, it was so much custom development, high-touch client relationship stuff, somewhere around 20% profit margin. Productized service, 80% profit margin. It just flips.
So for those that are at home that are in the kind of spot that you were in 5 years ago, they've got clients, they're seeing the same things coming back, they've got some ideas, they're product curious, as I like to call it. What are kind of the final hot tips or words of advice that you have for them if they're thinking about making this kind of a move?
Do the reflection and see, like, some people just have agency in their DNA and they see a shiny object, but some people they realize that they want to be the product model. So do some soul searching. That's number one. Number two is, like when I first launched LifterLMS, I had 42 customers, right? That was $7,000, I believe, is what we did on our launch, which flies out the door in a heartbeat just to pay a developer for 1 month. So how are you going to bridge that gap? I think productized services are good. But also making your agency run more profitably is good. We kept working the spreadsheets, getting better at scope creep, getting better at managing the relationship with the client, getting better at like upselling more work into the client. Like get that cash machine rolling and get your numbers straight so that you can finance these pet projects and don't get too attached to it. Like just like with the productized service or the software, it's a process, not an event. You got to constantly be like, I think my biggest takeaway with building really any offering, service, productized service or product is be open to having your assumptions challenged and be open to surfacing what assumptions are you operating under, because assumptions about who your customers are, what they value, what features they want, what business goals they have, what they find as essential, what they find as sexy, what they find as necessary. All these different things are assumptions. And if you can have an open mind and just be like, everything's up for debate, you're trying to get to like base reality, I call it. That's the key to unlocking value in a really good offer, is not being too attached to your assumptions and helping your clients and your customers uncover their own. Because, if you're in the results for helping people get results for other people, there's just so many assumptions at play that sometimes we lose focus on the end user results, which is really the most important thing.
Love those insights. Super wise. And I hope that those at home are writing notes and listening attentively, and are going to go reflect on some of that stuff.
And I just want to say one final word that really helped me when I was making this transition, which was this idea as a company that you can be in one of three states. You can be the Walking Dead, you can have a modest win, or you can have a runaway success. And what we see in the media and in the bookstores is celebration and hero worship of the runaway successes. When I first launched my software product and I got my first 42 customers, that was a modest win. It's not the kind of launch that you hear a lot about. So if you have a modest win under your belt, don't give up. And also celebrate where you've come as a freelancer, as an agency person, because that's an incredibly impressive feat to pull off in and of itself. And it will serve you well down the road if you do decide to get into productized service or straight up products, because that skill of running an agency is truly an amazing thing and a business asset.
I love that you brought that up, and that's some great advice. So with all that, for those of you that are listening at home, leave us a comment wherever you're listening to this. Let us know what you got from this episode. Please reach out and share your feedback. And Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on the show today and sharing such valuable insight with all of those that might be thinking about building a product out of their agency. So thanks so much for your time and for being on the show, man.
Thank you, Marcel.
That's all for today's episode of the Agency Profit Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe right here so you never miss another episode. And if you want to keep watching, we've got another one queued up for you right here. And of course, head to Parakeeto.com if you want to check out more of our content and free resources to help you improve your agency's profitability. See you on the next episode.